There's a moment in every man's life where he realizes that he's been living a lie. Whether it's the kind of lie that's been building for years or one that suddenly reveals itself in a blink of an eye. For me, it was a random Tuesday evening. It's odd to think about now because I had no idea that moment would change everything. You know that feeling you get when you're walking through a crowd and someone's gaze lingers on you for just a second too long? It's the kind of thing that sends a shiver down your spine, but you can't quite explain why. That's what I felt the first time I saw her. It wasn't a deep glance, no dramatic spark, just a passing moment. But it stuck with me. I thought, that's strange, and then I moved on with my life. But the thing is, I didn't move on. Not really. I was just another guy, ordinary, nothing special. No one would look twice at me unless I was wearing a suit, and even then, it wasn't because I looked good in it. But there she was, Lily. She wasn't like the others. I could tell right away. Not because she was a supermodel or because she had that glint in her eye that screamed danger, but because she didn't act like she had anything to prove. She seemed like she was just there. At first, I thought she was just another person I'd pass by and forget. But I was wrong. Over the course of weeks, she became the thing that occupied my thoughts, like a song you can't shake off. I kept running into her in places where I least expected it. At the coffee shop, at the bookstore, sometimes just passing by on the street. The weirdest part? It didn't feel like coincidence. It felt like she was always in my periphery, like a shadow that I couldn't quite focus on. One day, as I stood at a traffic light, I saw her across the street. She was holding a coffee cup, staring into the distance, the kind of stare that felt almost like she was waiting for something, or someone. And I couldn't help myself. I crossed the street. I just did it, without thinking, like I was being pulled by something I couldn't see or understand. "Hey," I said, my voice sounding way too unsure. She turned toward me, a soft smile playing on her lips. It wasn't one of those big, showy smiles, just a quiet, knowing one, like she had already decided she was going to let me into her world. "Hi," she said, like we were already familiar. We stood there for a moment, awkward but comfortable in the silence. I don't know why, but I felt like I had to ask her if she wanted to grab a coffee with me. So I did. She said yes. No hesitation, just a soft nod, and for the first time in months, I felt like something in my life was going to be different. I thought I was making a simple connection with someone, maybe even beginning a new friendship, but that's not how it went. That coffee turned into more than just a drink. Over the next couple of months, we met up regularly. Not every day, but often enough that I started expecting it. I didn't know what I was hoping for, but every time I saw her, it felt like the world outside of our conversations disappeared. I remember one evening, she told me something that has stuck with me ever since. "It's funny, isn't it?" she said, leaning back in her chair, staring out the window like she was lost in thought. "How we live our lives, always expecting the next big thing to happen, and then we miss the smaller moments, the ones that matter." I didn't get it at the time. I was just listening to her words, letting them float around in my head like smoke, wondering if she was just being philosophical or if she was trying to tell me something deeper. But that wasn't the point. Not yet, anyway. Then came the trip. She mentioned it casually, like it wasn't important. "A work trip," she said, "to some remote part of the country I'd never heard of. She'd be gone for a few days," she told me. It didn't seem like anything significant. She wasn't asking for my opinion or even explaining the details. Just, "I'll be out of town, but I'll be back soon." What struck me about her departure was how calm I felt. I'd gotten used to her absence in such a short amount of time. It wasn't until she was already gone that I realized something strange about the way we interacted. I don't know how to describe it exactly, but there was a sense of distance, of walls between us. It wasn't that I wasn't invested, but I wasn't sure what I was waiting for either. That night, I was sitting at home, watching the usual reruns on TV, when my phone buzzed. I glanced at it lazily, half expecting it to be another notification I didn't care about. But it was a message from her. "Hey, I got to this place. It's beautiful, but I don't know if I'll be able to text much while I'm here. I'll call you soon." Something about that message made my skin prickle. It wasn't the content, per se, but the way she worded it. It was too final, like she wasn't going to return anytime soon, like she was cutting something off without saying it directly. I didn't know why it bothered me so much, but it did. I shrugged it off, trying to convince myself that I was being paranoid. She was just busy, I thought. She had her own life to live, and we weren't even close enough for me to demand anything from her. But that was the last time I heard from her. A couple of days passed, and then a week. No calls, no texts, just silence. I tried to reach out, nothing. I waited, thinking that maybe she was caught up in work, that maybe she was just one of those people who shut down when things got overwhelming. But that didn't explain it. She didn't even send a message to say she had arrived home safely. I thought about it, and I thought about it some more. And then, after hours of pacing around my apartment, it hit me, something was wrong. She didn't just forget. She didn't just get busy. Something had changed, and I was the last to realize it. I was being kept in the dark, and I wasn't going to stand for it. I needed answers, and I wasn't going to wait around for them to come to me. I couldn't sit around anymore, staring at the same four walls. The silence was suffocating, and every minute that passed without hearing from Lily felt like an eternity. I couldn't shake the feeling that something was terribly wrong, but I had no idea where to begin looking for answers. I tried calling her once more. The phone rang and rang. No voicemail, no automatic response, nothing. I stared at the screen for a moment. The tiny flickering bar showing the call was still going through, and for a split second, I thought maybe it was just a bad connection. But when I heard the click of the line cutting off, I felt a sinking feeling in my gut. It wasn't just her phone that was ignoring me. It was her, in a way I didn't want to admit. A few days passed with no word. No texts, no calls. I even left her a message, sounding as calm as I could, asking if everything was okay, if she was all right, if something had happened. I didn't hear back. Then it hit me. That thing I had been avoiding. I had to find her. I had to know where she was, what she was doing. Because if I kept sitting here doing nothing, I'd lose my mind. I started small, revisiting places she mentioned, places she liked to frequent when she was home. I'd drive by her favorite coffee shop, just to see if she was there, hoping, praying she'd be sitting at one of the tables, working on her computer like she always did. But it never happened. It wasn't like a sudden disappearance. She had been gone for a few days, sure, but not this long. It didn't make sense. I started reaching out to people she knew, trying to stay calm, trying not to sound frantic. I called a few of her friends. No one had heard from her. Not in days. It was getting stranger by the hour. It wasn't until I called her boss that I got a lead. She's been off the grid, he told me, his voice sounding almost as confused as mine. We haven't been able to get in touch with her either. I thought she'd be back by now. That was when it clicked. This wasn't just some simple mix-up or travel delay. Lily had vanished, and I had no idea where she was. I drove to her apartment, thinking that maybe, just maybe, I'd find some clue about where she might have gone. But when I stepped into her place, everything seemed too normal. Everything was exactly where it should be. Her jacket hung on the coat rack, her shoes lined up by the door, her bag resting on the couch. It was the kind of space that felt like she'd just stepped out for a moment and would return any second. But there was one thing that immediately caught my attention. Her phone charger. It was lying on the coffee table, right next to her phone. But her phone was gone. And that, more than anything else, made the hairs on the back of my neck stand up. She never left without her phone. I sat down on the couch, feeling an unsettling chill in the air. I didn't know what I was expecting to find. I wasn't some detective, and this wasn't some grand mystery I was trying to solve. But this felt wrong. I looked at the phone charger one more time and noticed something else. A small, folded piece of paper tucked beneath it. At first, I didn't think much of it, but when I unfolded it, I saw the name Ethan written on it in Lily's handwriting. My stomach dropped. Ethan? Who the hell was Ethan? I stared at the name on the paper, trying to process what I was seeing. Ethan. My mind raced, but it didn't make any sense. Who was this guy? Why had Lily written his name down? And why had she hidden it in such an odd place? Was it a coincidence? Maybe it was just someone she worked with. But even as I tried to justify it to myself, I knew deep down that this wasn't something I could ignore. I felt a wave of nausea creeping up on me as I picked up the piece of paper, turning it over in my hands. It was just a name, but it was enough to set off 1,000 questions. Why had Lily been hiding this name? Why had she left without a trace? And why hadn't she told me about it? I could feel the panic rising in me. I had to know more. I had to find out who Ethan was. But how? I didn't have anything to go on, no solid lead, just a name scrawled hastily on a piece of paper. Still, I couldn't shake the feeling that it was important. That somehow, this Ethan held the key to whatever had happened to Lily. The hours dragged on as I sat in her apartment, the silence feeling suffocating. I had already tried calling the usual contacts, but no one had heard from her. She had vanished without a word. As I sat there, trying to piece things together, something else caught my eye. A small leather-bound notebook, half hidden beneath her laptop. It looked out of place, too organized, too deliberate. It seemed like something she didn't want anyone to find. I opened it slowly, flipping through the pages. At first, it was just mundane things, notes about work, sketches for new interior designs, reminders for meetings. But then I came across a series of entries that made my blood run cold. They weren't about work or anything casual. They were personal. The first entry I read was dated about 2 weeks before she left for New York. It was written in a hurried scrawl, almost as if she had been rushing to get something down before someone walked in. I can't stop thinking about him. I didn't plan for this, but I can't deny it. There's something between us. I feel alive when I'm with him. My heart sank. I read it over and over, trying to make sense of what I was seeing. This wasn't about a work colleague or a fleeting crush. This was something real, something deeper. I turned the page, desperate to know more, to understand what had happened. The next entry was even more revealing. He's leaving soon, but I don't know what I want. It's wrong, but I don't care. I think I'm in too deep to turn back now. I felt like I'd been punched in the gut. Lily wasn't just gone. She had been hiding something from me, something that ran far deeper than I ever could have imagined. She hadn't just taken a trip, she had been involved with someone else. This, Ethan, wasn't some fleeting acquaintance. He was someone who had become a significant part of her life, and I had no idea until now. I slammed the notebook shut, my head spinning. How long had this been going on? Why hadn't I seen the signs? But then, it dawned on me. Lily had been different in the days leading up to her trip. The late nights, the secretive texts, the way she'd seemed distant, even when she was right next to me. I had been too blind, too comfortable in my own assumptions to notice. I needed to know more about this, Ethan. I needed answers, and I couldn't wait any longer. I grabbed my phone and started typing the name into search engines, hoping to find something, anything that could give me a clue about who he was. After a few minutes, a link popped up, his social media profile. I clicked it without thinking, my pulse quickening as the page loaded. Ethan was someone she had met through a professional project. At least, that's what it seemed like on the surface. He worked as an architect, and his profile was filled with pictures of buildings and designs. Nothing personal, nothing that would make me think twice. But as I scrolled down, something caught my eye. A photo from just a few days before Lily had left for New York. She was in it, smiling, looking as happy as I'd ever seen her. I zoomed in on her face. She didn't look like the same woman I knew. There was something in her expression, something unfamiliar. It was as if she was looking at Ethan, not me. I stared at the photo for what felt like an eternity. I couldn't deny it anymore. She had been involved with him, and whatever had happened between them had led her to disappear without a trace. But why? Why hadn't she just told me? What had happened in the days leading up to her sudden silence? I could feel the anger rising in me, but more than that, I felt a crushing sense of betrayal. All the memories of our time together, our conversations, the plans we made, suddenly felt like they were built on a lie. I needed to find Ethan. I had to confront him, and I had to get Lily back. Whatever this was, it wasn't over yet. I spent the next few hours obsessing over every detail I could find about Ethan. The more I dug, the more I realized how little I actually knew about Lily's life. Everything was a blur, like I had been living in a fog, unaware of what was really going on. The social media posts weren't much help. Ethan's profile was full of architectural designs, work projects, and generic selfies. Nothing personal, nothing that made him stand out in any way. I tried to dig deeper, but there was nothing concrete. He didn't seem like the type to post about personal relationships or anything that might give me insight into their connection. I needed to act quickly. If Lily had been hiding this from me, then she was good at it. Too good. Maybe I was too trusting, too blind to see what was right in front of me. I grabbed my jacket and left her apartment. I didn't know where I was going, but I couldn't stay there anymore. I needed answers, and I wasn't going to get them by sitting idly. After a while, I ended up in front of Ethan's office building. I had no real plan, no strategy. I didn't know what I was expecting. Maybe I thought I'd confront him, demand answers, and that would be the end of it. But as I stood outside the glass doors, I hesitated. What if I was wrong? What if I was just another jealous husband chasing shadows? But I couldn't shake the image of Lily's face from that photo. She looked different, like she was someone else entirely. I needed to hear it from him. Needed to know if everything she had told me was a lie. I took a deep breath and walked in. The receptionist greeted me, but I barely heard her. I wasn't there for pleasantries. Is Ethan here? I asked, trying to sound calm. She looked at me for a second, then checked her computer. He's in a meeting. Can I help you with something? I hesitated, then made a decision. I'll wait. I didn't know what to expect, but I wasn't leaving until I got some answers. Minutes passed, maybe hours, but it felt like no time at all. Then, finally, Ethan walked in. He didn't notice me at first. His back turned as he walked to the elevator. I almost didn't approach him. But then he turned around, and our eyes met. For a split second, I saw something flicker in his eyes, surprise, maybe even guilt. It didn't last long, though, and he quickly masked it with a smile. Can I help you? He asked, his tone polite but distant. I stood there, frozen for a moment. The man in front of me wasn't some stranger. He was the reason everything had unraveled. He was the one who had taken her, in a way. He didn't even seem shocked to see me, like he'd been expecting this moment all along. I need to talk to you, I said, my voice barely above a whisper. Ethan studied me for a moment, his eyes narrowing slightly, as if he was trying to figure out if I was some kind of threat or just a confused husband. It was like he knew exactly what was coming, but he didn't know how I was going to handle it. The tension between us was thick, like two people on opposite sides of an unspoken boundary. I don't think we have anything to talk about, Ethan said, his voice cool, controlled. My hands balled into fists, but I held my ground. I think we do. My voice was steady, but inside I was anything but calm. I could feel my heart racing in my chest. I had been waiting for this moment for days, but now that it was here, it felt surreal. He glanced around the lobby, then back at me. Not here, he muttered, his eyes flicking toward the elevator, almost like he was trying to avoid making a scene. I wasn't about to let him off that easy. No. Now, I said, my voice hardening. Tell me what's going on. Tell me what happened with Lily. For a moment, Ethan said nothing. He seemed to be weighing his options, perhaps trying to decide how much he could reveal without losing control of the situation. But then he sighed, as if he'd given up on trying to act like this was anything less than what it was. She's a grown woman, he said slowly, his words almost calculated. She doesn't need anyone's permission to make decisions. Not yours, not mine. What happened between us? It wasn't planned. It wasn't some affair. She came to me for advice, for support. But things got complicated. Complicated? My blood boiled. I wanted to yell, to tell him how utterly wrong he was, how everything he was saying sounded like an excuse. But I forced myself to stay calm, to listen. You knew she was married, didn't you? I asked, trying to control the bitterness creeping into my voice. Ethan paused for a beat, his expression flickering with a hint of guilt. Yes, he admitted, but there was no remorse in his voice, just a matter-of-fact tone. But that doesn't change anything. Lily and I, we weren't what you think we were. This isn't about you or me. It's about what she wanted. She's not your property, man. You don't control her. Those words hit me like a slap to the face. It was as if everything I had believed about my relationship with Lily, everything I thought I knew, was nothing more than a facade. You think this is easy for me? I gritted out, my fists clenched at my sides. You think it's easy to find out my wife has been sneaking around with someone else? Someone I don't even know? What the hell do you mean she came to you for advice? That doesn't explain anything. That doesn't explain why she disappeared without a word. Ethan didn't flinch. He was cold, calculating, like he had already accepted his role in this twisted situation. He crossed his arms, leaning against the elevator doors. I'm not the one who needs to explain anything. Lily will tell you herself when she's ready. I'm not going to be the one to fix your marriage. His words were like ice, cutting through my rage, but I couldn't stop. I needed answers. Where is she? What did you do to her? The words tumbled out before I could stop them. There was a part of me, a small voice in the back of my mind, telling me to stay rational, but I was too far gone. Ethan's face hardened, his eyes locking with mine. You don't get it, do you? She's not some lost puppy for you to find. She's out there, living her life the way she wants to. I'm not going to sit here and pretend I have all the answers. If you're looking for closure, you're looking in the wrong place. The elevator doors opened behind him, but I didn't move. My mind was reeling, trying to make sense of everything he was saying. This wasn't how I imagined this conversation going. It wasn't the confrontation I had expected. So what, that's it? You're just going to walk away and pretend none of this matters? I spat. She's my wife. I have the right to know what's going on. Ethan sighed again, shaking his head, like he had grown tired of this game. You had your chance, man. You weren't paying attention when it mattered. You didn't notice when she started pulling away, when she started needing someone else to fill the space you left behind. He paused for a second, his gaze sharp. This isn't about what you think you deserve. It's about what Lily wants. And right now, she doesn't want you. I felt like the ground had been ripped out from under me. His words hit harder than I expected, harder than anything I'd ever prepared myself for. But deep down, I knew he was right. Maybe I hadn't been paying attention. Maybe I hadn't been the husband I thought I was. Before I could respond, Ethan stepped into the elevator, his hand hovering over the button. You can keep searching for answers, but they won't change anything. Lily's made her choice. It's time you accept it. The elevator doors slid shut before I could say another word. I stood there, stunned, trying to make sense of what had just happened. But the worst part? I didn't feel anger. I felt empty. I stood there in the lobby, the words echoing in my head. She doesn't want you. It was a punch to the gut. The weight of it almost crushed me. I had been chasing after answers, after some kind of closure, but Ethan's words were like a slap in the face. The more I thought about it, the more I realized how much I had missed, how much I had failed to see. Lily had been pulling away for months, maybe longer, and I hadn't noticed. I had been so wrapped up in my own world, so comfortable with the life we had built, that I never saw the cracks forming. I never asked the questions. I never pushed her. As the elevator doors slid shut, I felt a surge of panic. What now? I had no idea where to go next. Ethan had made it clear that he wasn't going to help me, but he had also given me a clue. I had to find Lily. But where? I thought back to everything she had told me before she left for New York. She had seemed so distant, but there was one thing that stood out. She had mentioned a place, a small cabin in the woods. I had never really thought about it at the time. It seemed like just another one of her random ideas. But now, I wondered if that was where she had gone. I didn't waste any time. I grabbed my car keys and headed for the door, my mind racing. The drive felt like it took forever, the weight of what I had learned pressing down on me. I tried to push the thoughts of Ethan and what he'd said out of my mind, but it was impossible. They were everywhere. When I arrived at the cabin, I was almost surprised to find it exactly where I expected. The small, secluded house sat in the middle of nowhere, surrounded by dense trees and a quiet, eerie stillness. I parked my car and stepped out, my breath coming in shallow bursts. I didn't know what I was expecting to find, but as I walked up to the front door, I felt a cold dread settle in my stomach. I knocked. No answer. I knocked again, louder this time. Still nothing. My hand hovered over the doorknob. I wanted to turn back, to walk away and pretend I hadn't seen anything. But I knew I couldn't. I needed to face this, whatever it was. I opened the door. And that's when I saw it. Sitting on the kitchen table was a small stack of papers, papers I recognized. They were letters. Letters from Ethan. I froze at the sight of the papers on the table. There was no mistaking them. They were letters, personal, intimate, and in some way, they felt like a betrayal. The neat handwriting across the top of the first one was unmistakable. Lily's handwriting. I felt my heart beat faster in my chest, a mixture of anger, confusion, and an overwhelming sense of dread. I walked forward slowly, almost as if I was afraid to touch them, as if the moment I picked them up, everything would shift irreparably. I had come here for answers, but the more I stood there, the more I realized that I didn't know if I was prepared for them. I picked up the top letter, unfolding it carefully, as if the paper might tear. I didn't want to believe what I was about to read, but I had no choice. The first line hit me like a ton of bricks. I never thought I'd be writing this down, but I need you to understand. I need to explain why I've made the choices I've made. I took a deep breath, my hands trembling as I read on. You know how we've always talked about how things feel different sometimes? How there's always that spark when we're together. For the first time, I don't feel that spark. And the more I think about it, the more I realize I'm not just missing it. I'm missing something. It's not your fault, Victor. It's mine. Each sentence felt like a hammer to my chest. The words on the page weren't angry, they weren't blaming me, but they were cutting through me in a way I couldn't control. She was telling me she wasn't in love with me anymore. That's what it felt like. And it was something I had never, ever expected. But the letter didn't stop there. There's someone else. Someone I've been seeing. I can't deny it anymore. Ethan has been my rock, The person I've turned to when everything felt wrong. I've been lying to you, Victor, and I'm so sorry. I never meant to hurt you, but I don't know how to fix this anymore. I dropped the letter, my legs nearly giving way beneath me. Ethan. Ethan had been more than just an affair. He had been the one she turned to, the one who made her feel alive again. There was no hiding from it now. No pretending that I could somehow turn this all around. Lily had made her choice, and I had been too blind to see it. But the letters weren't just a confession. They were also a map of her feelings, of everything that had been happening behind my back. I picked up another letter, trying to hold it together, and the next words only dug the knife deeper. I've been so scared, Victor. Scared of losing you, scared of the life we built. But I can't keep pretending. I need space. I need to figure out who I am without you. Ethan is someone I've connected with on a level I never thought was possible. But even as I write this, I know I can't keep lying to you. There it was, plain as day. She had fallen for Ethan. And no matter how much I had wanted to hold on to the idea of us, of the life we shared, it was slipping through my fingers. I didn't know how long I stood there, just staring at the letters. The truth was staring back at me, too raw and painful to deny. I was angry. But more than that, I was devastated. I had spent all this time chasing a relationship that had already unraveled without me even noticing. I heard the faint sound of footsteps behind me, and I spun around, my heart leaping into my throat. There she was, Lily. My heart skipped a beat as I turned around. There she was, standing in the doorway, looking at me with wide eyes, as if she hadn't expected to find me there. She looked so different, tired, worn out, but still the woman I had loved for years. The woman who had been my everything. For a moment, neither of us spoke. The silence between us was thick, suffocating. She glanced at the letters on the table, then back at me, and I could see the conflict in her eyes. Victor, she whispered, her voice barely audible. You found them. I nodded slowly, not sure what to say. The anger I had felt earlier had begun to fade, replaced by a deep sadness. But beneath all of it, there was still a flicker of hope. I'm sorry, she said, her voice cracking. I didn't want you to find out like this. I didn't know how to tell you. I thought maybe if I just stayed away long enough, it would make things easier. Easier for you, maybe. I replied, my voice calm but laced with hurt. But not for me, Lily. I didn't deserve this. I didn't deserve to be kept in the dark. She took a step closer, her eyes brimming with tears. You didn't. And I hate myself for how I've handled this. I should have told you sooner. I should have been honest with you, but I was scared. Scared of hurting you. Scared of losing you. I took a deep breath, trying to steady myself. But you already lost me, Lily. The moment you chose him over me. Her face fell, and she stepped back as if I had slapped her. No, she said, shaking her head. That's not how it happened. Ethan was a mistake. He was there when I needed someone, but it was never about him. It was about me losing myself, losing the person I used to be, the person I was with you. I watched her, every word hitting me like a wave. And now? Now, I want to fix this. I don't want to keep running from the person I love. I want to rebuild what we had. But I need you to trust me again, and I know that's a lot to ask. I was silent for a long time, the weight of her words settling over me. She was asking for forgiveness, asking for a chance to make things right. I had no idea if it was even possible, but I could see the sincerity in her eyes. I could see that she was truly sorry, and for the first time in a long time, I felt a spark of hope. I don't know if I can trust you again, I said, my voice barely above a whisper. But I'm willing to try. I want to try. She stepped forward again, her hand trembling as she reached out to me. You don't have to forgive me right away. I just need you to know that I'm here. For you. For us. I reached out and took her hand, holding it gently in mine. It wasn't going to be easy, and it wasn't going to happen overnight. But maybe, just maybe, we could find our way back to each other. Maybe we could rebuild what we lost, piece by piece. The road ahead would be long, and the wounds would take time to heal. But standing there, in that quiet cabin, I realized that it wasn't the end. It was a new beginning. And for the first time in a long time, I felt like everything might just be okay.